welcome to the Ask Me How I Know show. I'm your host, Julie Holly, and I'm so excited you're here. Ask Me How I Know is the only podcast in the multifamily niche replicating what takes place outside the walls of a seminar. Remember when we used to get together like that? This is like the lobby where honest, unscripted conversations take place and transformation happens. We'll talk about practical problem solving in the multifamily niche, as well as overcoming mental roadblocks. This episode is brought to you by 3 Keys Investments. 3 Keys Investments is dedicated to helping people like you, you, enter the multifamily investment space to build passive income and legacy wealth. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed Ask Me How I Know, I'd be honored if you did. Thanks so much for joining me today, and now for our featured guest. Hey, welcome back to Ask Me How I Know. Today I have an amazing guest on our show today. Mark is joining us, and this is kind of a different sort of interview today, and I'm really excited about it. So welcome to Ask Me How I Know, Mark.
Well, thank you so much, Julie. It's an honor to be on your show.
Well, Mark, you have a serious Ask Me How I Know because you've learned a lot about finances over the years. Can you tell me about what even led you into, because I'll let you give a little bio. I kind of want to unpack it a little bit. Can you tell us about like the struggle that you had and then we'll get into where it led you?
Well, sure. I can go clear back to the beginning, but I also have, I think, so relevant. We've had some crazy things happen even in the last 60 days in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic that we're all experiencing as we're recording this. So just quick backstory. Again, Mark Willis, I'm a certified financial planner. I own a financial firm here in Chicago, and we help and work with clients that want to build real wealth in ways that are safe and predictable, and help folks specifically in becoming their own source of financing. And that piece of becoming your own banker is really what helps, I think, a lot of our clients become more financially sane and not have to take unnecessary risks when bankers are looking to leech money off of our backs.
Oh my goodness. Unnecessary risks. Safe, secure. Isn't that what everybody is looking for right now? I mean, in the pandemic, with everything going on globally, with gold prices going through the roof and silver. I mean, as we're going through all of this, everybody's grasping at straws in a sense. But how did you, obviously this is what you studied and this is what you learned, but you have actually had experiences that have led you here.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell a quick story. I was just walking through the grocery store with my daughter back in probably mid to late March. And I was absolutely shocked. I saw, and I'm sure many of your listeners have seen this same image, but I'm walking through a very nice upscale grocery store and all the shelves are empty. People are like running to grab an extra 10,000 rolls of toilet paper. The wine, people with like whole cases full of wine coming out, I'm like, I'm going to their house for the party. That sounds awesome.
I was going to say, at least they have their priorities in order. Yeah. Come on, toilet paper and wine.
That's right. Yeah. Well, it's like, here's our new currency, right? Wow, I just could not believe it. 2020 has served up the most weird and I think unprecedented financial situation, not to mention health situation. And of course, Julie, my heart and my prayers go out to people who've been, medically impacted on a health basis by this virus. But I'll say this, as a country, we were very sick before the coronavirus hit our shores on a financial basis. Debt hit higher levels than even before 2008. Just to claim one example there, the U.S. Commerce Bureau says that we, on average, are financing our debt to the tune of 37% of our income. So let that sink in for a minute. If that's true, then that means a third of our income is just there to be in the privilege of being in debt to a bank. That means, and if time is money, Julie, a third of my day, your day, the average American's day, a third of our day is working for a bank, which is jaw-dropping.
It is. That. Well, and I actually have, in my mind, I always think of that as slavery.
Right.
And that's a
Yeah.
very sensitive word to use, but
Hmm.
really that is what we are. And I'm
What
a
other
Star
word would
Wars
there be?
going,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a Star Wars fan. And so,
Yeah.
I kind of think back to some of those images of, people working in, those different planets and everything. And it's like, what
Mm,
is different about us?
yeah.
The
Well, it
fantasized
was
version
a
of reality.
it was a galaxy far away, but there's a great book out there called Debt: The First 5,000 Years by David Graeber. And it may not have been a galaxy far away, but it was a long time ago. And human civilization, for as long as it's existed, has experienced banking. Banking is a verb, it's a function, it's something that we all have gone through. And my own story, I went through 2008, graduated, my wife and I graduated in 2008 with $120,000 of student loan debt with no job and no plan to pay it off, and not really employable because we were in the middle of the last great recession, and we just had no clue that we were walking into a tar sand basically. And I joke and say that I married two women in college, my beautiful wife and Sallie Mae came along for the ride, and she was not welcome in our relationship, but there she was, so so that's kind of where we started our life, Julie. And it was like slavery. I agree with that word. And, and I think there's pathways out that are better than others. And again, if banking is the problem, I don't think we should get rid of banking. Banking just is, whether there's a bank in your town or not, whether you have a checking account or a line of credit or not, we're already in the banking business just by nature of being a part of the financial economy. It's sort of like if you were a fish, you're a part of that ocean, whether you realize it or not. We're a part of banking, whether we realize it or not. So, what doesn't change in the midst of 2020 and the global pandemic and all of the turbulent season that we're all going through, what doesn't change is banking and our need for access to capital. That liquidity, that need for capital and cash does not go away. But there's a great quote, Julie. Mark Twain said, "A banker is a fellow who will lend you his umbrella when the sun is shining, but wants it back as soon as it starts to rain." And that's so true, right?
Oh my goodness. I mean, you look at what happens with it, that is absolutely true. And we're seeing it happen even, right now, in the all of the debt being offered. Oh no, 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 we're closing it. We're coming back.
Right.
Little golems out there, mine.
Yeah, my precious.
Yes, exactly.
I think we watch the
So
same movies, Julie. That's great.
I'm pretty sure. So there is a solution though. I don't know if you want to talk
Yes.
more about that, but I am curious because there are everyone will offer their own version of a solution, but they're not all equal, and they're not
Right.
always all going to lead you away from that slavery and into the freedom that you want.
Right. Let's talk about those options.
Right.
Again, I am a certified financial planner, and part of my job is to make sure that it's a well-rounded, comprehensive strategy in the best interest of my clients. So it's not a good fit for everybody, but let's talk about some options and strategies for a business owner out there or a real estate investor out there who are looking for ways to be financially immune from the next financial pandemic. I like to tell folks you can antivirus your money, just like you can antivirus your computer, and
Mhm.
just like you can antivirus your body, you can antivirus your money. And it comes down to a few key characteristics. I like to tell folks and our clients that where you put your money makes it do different things. And that is such an
Yeah.
obvious statement to say it so bald faced like that. But many people, Julie, and you probably know this, go through their entire life and never stop to think, what do I want my money to do for me? Such an obvious, simple question. But if we all took 5 or 10 minutes of our life to just sit down and say, where do I want my money to live? Because where it lives makes it act different. A 401k
Yeah.
is going to make your money act different than a hedge fund or a savings account or an annuity or a dynastic trust or raw land, right? It's all different places money can be parked for a while. And depending on where it goes, it will treat itself different. It'll have different characteristics. So, how do you antivirus your money? I think you need a few key characteristics. One, you need your money to have lots of fluids. That's how we get over a flu. That's how we get over a cold. That's how we get over a financial pandemic. So lots of liquidity. What I mean there is access to your capital. You need regular and immediate liquidity. Access to your cash is like fluids for your body. And
So,
too many people. Yep.
so when you're talking about that, let's make some comparisons here for people, because and we'll talk about investment, portfolio investors through this. I know that's going to, kind of get woven through there. Which part of my portfolio has that liquidity, and let's compare that to what it doesn't have. Just one or two examples, so we can really solidify that.
You got it. Yeah, I'd say that there's difficulty in getting access to your cash if your money is tied to the markets right now. Even though it's liquid, technically I can sell my brokerage account anytime I want to, but it's not exactly liquid if it's 35% down. Who wants to sell when you've lost a bunch of money?
Yep.
And you try to sell that brokerage account stock when it's 35% up. What's your investment advisor going to say? Don't sell it yet. You're way up. You'll get a taxable gain. It's going to the moon. We're invested in pets.com all over again. So I would say that stock accounts are not real wealth. They are paper wealth or paper losses. That's not liquid. That's just sitting on a value that you hope and pray someone is willing to buy that stock from you when it's time to sell. That's one illiquid asset.
Can I even take that a step further? Because as I was doing a little research and writing on this topic, I was like, it's not even paper anymore.
Yeah.
It's just
digits.
That's right. It's like ones and zeros. Now we're going into the Matrix. Like, wow, that's all we have.
All kinds of great movie quotes today. I love it, Julie. That's awesome. I'm going to have to keep up with you here. This is awesome. So yeah. So what about real estate? Well, real estate is great. And it's been, since the pyramids, a great place for people to keep their real wealth and build real wealth. But it's not liquid either, right? We have to wait and hopefully someone buys it at the right price. So what about 401ks? Well, 401ks is like putting your money in jail, and you have to use a bail bond to break your money free. All right, that's the early withdrawal penalty.
I have no movie quote for that one, but I love that analogy of putting
Shawshank Redemption, right?
Exactly. But it really is. I mean, 401ks are just like shackling your money.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And we could keep going. There's a number of places you could get CDs where you have to break that contract and break the interest growth and get penalized to get access to your own money. That to me is not liquidity. That's like putting your money in quarantine. And I don't want my money locked away when I need it the most. Again, back to the banker's quote. If all of my money, and the average American, the average American keeps the vast majority of their wealth, if they have a net worth that's positive, is in their 401k and in their personal home. Now, right now, when are we most likely going to need access to cash? Well, during a crisis, right? When are we least likely going to be able to get access to that money? Well, again, during a crisis. When are we going to be able to least likely sell our assets for a fair price? Same time, during a crisis. I like to look for places where my money can sit and grow in a competitive interest rate, but I can get access to it within a few days and without any sort of penalty or early withdrawal tax or anything like that. That's one of the first and most important ways to antivirus your money. So
now I'm like, but you have to tell us, Mark. Tell us, where is the liquidity?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, that was me. That was our story. We had a massive mountain of student loan debt, and we just needed to find a place to pay off our debts. Our game plan was Dave Ramsey's debt snowball method at first. Right. But that's not liquid either, right? Think about this. Every payment I make toward my student loans or my mortgage payment on my properties or any debt payoff strategy, credit cards even, every payment I make, what do I have to show for my money? I get a bunch of thank you notes is all I have to show for my money, right? Thank you for your payment. Thank you for your payment. Every month, thank you for your payment. What can I do with those paper thank you notes? Well, I can't earn any interest on them. They go in the shredder, basically, is what they do. So I was literally throwing $5,000, $6,000 a month sometimes toward our student loans back in the day. And all I had to show for it was a bunch of thank you notes. And all I was losing was the compounding growth that my money could have earned for me if I had not paid down the debt and found a way to earn some investment yield instead. It's frightening / exciting / eye-opening. Talk about a red pill in the matrix. Someone had to come to me and say to me, Mark, they almost had to shake my shoulders. And it was a good friend of mine, a former professor of mine. He said to me, Mark, is it possible that Dave Ramsey could be wrong about something? Is it even possible? And that for me was a wake-up call. It was like the red pill in the matrix. It was like tumbling down Alice's rabbit hole.
Right.
And for me at that moment, I had to start to ask to myself, was I even thinking critically about Dave's baby steps? And baby steps are not bad. We all started with baby steps. But I want to walk more than just a few baby steps in my lifetime, right? There's a marathon out there I want to run out there. So the truth is, and the kernel of truth of the red pill that I had to swallow that day was, Mark, you finance everything you buy. You finance everything you buy. And that has not changed in 2020. Either you pay interest to a banker or you pay cash and you pass up interest you could have earned on the money had you left it invested instead. So I was losing my most valuable dollars in my lifetime because I was throwing money at debt in my early 20s when I could have been earning toward my future. And every dollar that you save and invest when you're young is like $15, right? By the time you're ready to retire, let's say. So we had to find a better way to do it. And I would say that's the final piece to our antivirusing our money. If we can become our own banker, it's like building antibodies against the virus of banking in our life. If banking is the problem, then banking on ourselves is the solution. And that's partly what we discovered. And it's how we ended up strategically paying off our student loans once we figured out the strategy, of course.
It is banking, literally banking, and then it's actually just taking that chance and that risk on yourself. And I think what I noticed in our culture is that we have taken the power away from people. We've said, my husband and I had this conversation as we were driving after I got off the phone with a financial planner that I was kind of, okay, final pushing aside. And I looked at my husband and I said, a year ago, I would never have made that phone call and I would never have taken that step because I have been taught, conditioned, and told that they know more than I do. I cannot know what they know. I cannot accomplish what they can accomplish. I must put all my trust and faith in this person and their profession. And the reality is, and we always work with really phenomenal people. So it's never a personal type thing. It's a professional situation. And so you go, but I am capable of knowing and understanding. And if I want to invest the time as I have, I too can figure out something that will work even better.
Yes.
So I'm very interested in you unpacking this for the audience of banking on yourself. And I'll add to that is part of what I was telling my husband was I actually believe in myself now. I believe, and cool. I think that people need to get to that point. So someone's out there listening and they're like, well, I really like what you're saying, Mark, but I don't know that I can believe in myself. So I'd love to hear the next part.
Yeah, it's sort of I agree. I think there's a word for this that we're both trying to find. It's like a multiple meanings to the same thing, right? Or multiple meanings to the same word. But you're right. There is the concept of banking, and then there's the depending on yourself or banking on yourself, which I love the dual meanings. And yeah, I'll tell a quick story. I had a gentleman the other day who called me up, and he had recently he scheduled a 15-minute introductory phone call with me, and he had been one of the recipients of the PPP loan program that the government was putting out for small businesses. He was in real estate. He did some e-commerce as well. But he called me up and said, Mark, I just received about $175,000 from this PPP program. I don't really need to spend it on inventory and stuff right away. I have some plans for it with payroll and other things later this year. But what can I do with this cash? And so we had that conversation. And I'll explain a little bit about the strategy because it's a mindset. Bank on yourself is a mindset, but it's also, take it down the ladder, it's also a tactic. It's a strategy that you can employ, whether you're working with $175,000 or $175. You can become your own source of financing. You can literally become your last financial guru for yourself. You don't have to depend on the high priests of the financial universe. You don't have to wait for the Federal Reserve chairman to tell you what you need to do next with your money. This is your financial life, and nobody knows and nobody should care more about your money than you do. And Julie, good for you for realizing that for yourself. I've told people and even my own clients before that the four most dangerous words in the financial life of any person, the four most dangerous words in the financial vocabulary of any person is "do it for me." Right? So if you can become your own source of financing, you can fire your banker and become your own source of financing. It changes how you do everything else. I think Gary Keller, he's famous for that, the focusing question, where he says, what's the one thing you can do such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? I like to apply that to my financial life. What's the one thing I can do with my money such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? And I think banking and taking that function of banking in-house changes everything else about my financial life. So here's kind of bringing it down the ladder. Here's what it looks like. We did some research. We were like, how can we do this? How can we actually pay off the student loans that we owe? How can we build real wealth at the same time? How can we take the function of banking and the benefits and the control of banking? I mean, think about how cool it is, how profitable it is to be a banker.
Banks
Really
make a lot of money, and people seem to think that banks, and I'm going to lump a lot of things in here, banks and hospitals and these services that we utilize all the time, people tend to view them as not for profit.
Right.
Oh, they're there
like
to
utility
help
companies
me.
or something.
No, they're not there to help you. They are a business and they are making money.
Yes, the most
a lot
profitable
of it
business.
from you.
So true. So true. I mean, that's so true, Julie. There is a reason why banks have the biggest building in town, And if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., and you go see all these different federal buildings, if you look at the Federal Reserve building, the bank basically of the United States, it is unbelievably like ornate and just over the top. I mean, there is a reason. And it's like the high priest temple or something for our land. So what if you could do this for your family? What if you could actually be the student loan company for your children rather than having to pay cash and lose all that money forever? What if you could keep the wealth in the family and send your kids to college by being your own source of financing, being your own Sallie Mae to yourself? What if you could invest in your real estate and actually be your own mortgage company for yourself? What if you could buy your cars without having to use an auto loan and being your own auto finance company for yourself? I mean, if you really stop and think about how often we all use banks in our lives, there's a reason why, like I said, they're the biggest building in town. So
and can I
how do we
add
do
to
that?
that? How about I give myself a loan and I pay myself interest and I'm making more money off of money.
Yes.
Wait. Explain a little bit more, Mark.
Exactly. Well, that's exactly right. I don't want to steal from my own bank. I am a greedy banker when I have a captive customer, which is myself, right? So I get to charge myself an interest and I get to profit from that interest. And that's phenomenal. Now it's like financial jujitsu. I turned the problem of banking, which was an insult and a slavery to my life, and I've turned it into the most beneficial wealth generating strategy in my financial portfolio. I don't care what my mutual funds are going to do this year. I don't care what my stock return is. My ROI on my investment yield this year is going to be pennies as compared to how much I'll generate in wealth by being my own source of financing. Again, if I do this one thing with my financial life, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary. I'm a CFP and I'm saying don't care about rate of return. This is like heresy, right? So
Right.
it's all about banking. So let's bring it down the ladder a few notches. I promise, Julie, it is a mindset, but here's how we can implement this in your audience's life, like today, if they wanted to. So it has to be a financial vehicle. You have to use this idea of banking with real actual money. Otherwise, it's just a cool concept, right?
Well,
So
and
the
that's
way,
how you got, it's one thing to hear it. It's one thing to be like,
right,
whoa, my gosh, Mark, that sounds great. And I've heard some other people talk about this, but I'm just going to sit over here and continue on with Bank of America or whatever. No,
right,
you got
yeah,
to do something, people.
you got to. Otherwise, we look up and it's 20 years later, right?
Yep.
I say, life is like a roll of toilet paper. The more you use it, the faster it goes. So you've got to take action before it's too late, for sure. So it does come down to particular financial vehicles and strategies. And I looked at 450. I literally, part of our job in doing the CFP training and certification is you have to deeply investigate all kinds of crazy financial strategies. And what caught my attention as I was going through was, hey, wait a minute. There's this really old fashioned asset that's been around for about 200 plus years. It's been a financial vehicle in this country since the Constitution. It's grown on a guaranteed basis every single year. It's outside of the stock market. It gives us liquid access to our cash, so keep us liquid in tough times like we're in right now. It's available without any income tax due when it comes time to pull the money out. And we can borrow against it. And it's sort of like a bank. It's not literally an FDIC insured bank. You'd need like $100 million to charter a new bank in this country. But you can treat it like a bank for your family or for your business. And the more I dug into this financial tool, it just dumbfounded me. It's of all things, Julie, it's a little known variation of whole life insurance, dividend paying whole life insurance of all things. And it totally met all of what my wife and I were looking for. Whole life insurance grows guaranteed every single year outside of the stock market. It's liquid and accessible, meaning I can tap the cash in that policy, not the death benefit, but there's a living benefit of whole life insurance called cash value. And that cash value could be $1,000, $100,000, or $1,000,000. Just depends on how we've structured your policy. And you can tap that cash value like it's a bank account. You can use it like a line of credit to yourself, and you can borrow against it. And it's like a loan to yourself, and you're banking on yourself. And it continues to be sort of like a source of capital for your business, for your family. And there's no restrictions on what you use the money for. You could fix up your own kitchen, or you could flip a couple of properties, or you could send your kid to college, or you could lease all your vehicles through your business, through the policy. It's really up to your imagination exactly how you use the policy.
One of the things I like about what you're talking about is that as we're talking about the cage that 401ks are, just
Mm-hmm.
imprisoning your money. And I think we could throw Roth IRAs. We could throw a lot of different tools, self-directed IRAs. We could throw them all into this category of restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sure, you can have access to your money through your self-directed IRA, but you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, and then you got to pay us that.
Oh man, I kind of equate that to visiting hours at prison. You can do this, but you can't do this, and there's no touching and there's no talking, and there's you're restrained to 40 minutes of visiting time at the jail cell. But you're right, it is a lot like visiting hours at prison. There's a lot of restrictions on even a self-directed IRA. No self-dealing, can't fix up your own kitchen. You can't use the money for other reasons. It's strictly inside that self-directed IRA.
And you better report it. You better do everything exactly right. And you have to report. Now, with what you're talking about, let's talk about the reporting part of this, because I don't believe that there is a reporting part.
Exactly right. Yeah. Who is there to report to? It's a private contract with a private insurance company. Yeah. Nobody needs to know about it.
This is your money.
Oh,
your
what
money.
a concept.
And I know you earned it. It's your money, and you're using it how you want to use it. And you don't have mommy and daddy government hovering over you, telling you what to do.
Yes, correct.
I love this.
I don't need somebody else telling me what to do with my own money. I think I can handle it okay myself. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so now I want to go into this, and I want, Mark, wow, this sounds too good to be true. I'm just getting into investing and I'm going to be a passive investor. Is this the right tool for me? How do I do this?
Yeah. So let's talk about it from a balanced perspective first, Julie. I think you're exactly right. It does sound too good to be true. That's what I thought when I first heard about it and started stumbling across this and putting all the pieces together. So, right off the top, this is not an investment. Whole life insurance is not an investment. I consider it, and it is, a cash equivalent in your portfolio. Really don't expect this to do 30% a year rate of return, right? It's going to be nice and boring, which I don't know about you, but that's kind of perfect for me right now. Nice and boring sounds pretty sexy right now to me.
Vanilla is great. There's always a
Right,
time for vanilla. Come on.
That's right. You can always add, and like vanilla, you can always add other
Toppings.
ingredients, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you can double dip your vanilla. When you've got a policy that works this way, you can borrow against the life insurance cash value, and the policy will continue to grow even on the capital you borrowed. To say that another way, if you had $100,000 in cash value, and let's say that you wanted to do a syndication deal, you could borrow against the life insurance and borrow $60,000, let's say, to go invest in a syndication. All right. My policy's cash value and your policy's cash value would continue to grow with guaranteed interest and dividends on the entire $100,000. And then you'd also have your 60 grand over here getting a ROI on your syndication, whatever that might look like.
So what we're saying, because I absolutely love this whole concept, what we're saying is I'm double dipping. And that's what you said. We're going to double dip our ice cream. Okay, I'm going to make the money on the actual cash value of my policy. But then I just borrowed some of this money and I put it over here. And now that's making money. I call them money babies, by the way, because I want my money to grow and to make more and to procreate. So now you're having two different money baby machines.
I love that.
The more you can have, the better. And you're not losing. It's just this amazing, flourishing.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're right. Building and producing a system where your money is having babies. I love that. You're giving yourself the chance finally to reach what I call escape velocity. I think the debt staircase is one that we're constantly falling back down and then scratching our way back up to the top, only to fall back down again, just to climb back up again every time we buy a car, right? We're on another financing hamster wheel. Or every time we buy that next real estate deal, we're falling down the mortgage debt staircase. The other trouble is we're tied to that same line when we save. We save, and then we crash back down to net zero. We save, we crash back down to net zero. That's the problem with Dave Ramsey's cash only. Fine to be debt free. Let's scream it on the radio. I'm fine for that. But what if you could be better than debt free? And that's where banking on yourself comes in. If you can be better than debt free, you can escape the gravity of net zero. Of every time you spend money, it's no longer working for you. To your point, you can borrow against the cash value and it's still earning dividends and interest like you hadn't touched the money. That's what we call uninterrupted compound growth. And that to me is what, again, I'm going back to the things that don't change in our very turbulent world we're living in right now. One of the things that doesn't change is uninterrupted compound growth of your financial life is the most important thing you can look for and search for in the financial universe. I know it sounds very extreme to say it that way, Julie, but
it's not.
If you could find, I mean, think about it.
I've done my research on this concept, and I took the red pill as I was doing my own search. So I'm like, nope, it sounds crazy until you start to actually do your own research. And then you realize, wait a second, we're told to go down this particular path and we're herded along on a particular path, but there's this really great side exit that you can take, and it's extraordinary. Okay, I got to throw
Awesome.
a movie in
That's
there.
cool.
My son likes Percy Jackson, and in Percy Jackson, they get stuck in the lotus, and
Oh
it's just
yeah.
time never go. It's just time stands still, and it's amazing. I think this would be the equivalent.
Yeah, right. Yeah. What if you could again kind of keep your money safe and outside of the turbulence of everything that's happened this year in 2020? If I could have gone back in time to Valentine's Day and said, "Hey, this is going to happen in March, April, et cetera," and fast forward a few months and maybe we've got a real estate crisis on our hands with no one paying rent and unemployment
Yep.
running out. If I could have set this up for you in November, December, whatever, or even up through Valentine's Day, you would have been protected and even seen dividends paid straight through this year. We've actually seen some of the insurance companies that we work with raise their dividend for all of their policyholders this year. So we can't go back in time, obviously, but here's what we can do. We can recognize that there's been 3 of these major market crashes just since the year 2000. And we can ask ourselves, do I want to have happen to me next time what's happening to me right now? If you love what's happening to you right now, don't make a change because obviously it's working. Whatever you're doing is working. But if you want uninterrupted compound growth and still, as you said, double dip and allow that money to do 2 things at once, that's a real shot at becoming financially in control of your financial future, no matter what the world throws at you.
And it's not just a pipe dream of some sort. This is reality. This
Right.
is what people are doing. This is generational wealth
Mm-hmm.
and legacy wealth that is, curated, that you can pass on. So not only are you taking care of you right now, but now this is something that regardless of what happens with the economy in the future, now your kids have something that you can leave behind. Can we
Yeah.
talk about that component? Because it's really cool.
Yeah.
How about leaving something behind? What about our friends out there that they're mature in life and they have their nest egg that's got beat up in the different investment vehicles it's in, and they say, well, you know what, I like what you have to say, Mark. I'm going to give you a
Mm-hmm.
call. I want to go down this path. How can I leave this to my kids, my grandkids?
I'll tell you a very quick story because we had someone do this just the other day. They called me up for a 15-minute consultation just to learn more about this strategy, and they said, yeah, hey, my 401k became a 201k earlier this spring, and now it's back up to being a 501k, and I don't trust it at all, and I'd like to find some ways to leave some money to my future kids. And they talked to me too about a concern they had. I don't know if this was pretty advanced. I was very impressed with this couple when they were chatting because they even knew about something called the Secure Act. That was a recent law passed in December, last days of December 2019. Congress passed something called the Secure Act. And when Congress names something secure, you want to really find out if it's actually secure.
Saying, don't trust them? Come on.
Right. I mean, just think of other things like Social Security, for example. So the misnomers are really part of the fun, I think, of writing acronyms at Congress. But anyway, so they realized that if they were to pass away with, let's say they had $500,000, I think it was around that value, and they should pass away, then their children would be forced to take that money, that $500,000 over a 10-year period, forced. So they got rid of what's called the stretch IRA in 2019. So now if you have an IRA or a 401k and you have 2 children, guaranteed, guys, the math works out, the IRS will be the biggest beneficiary of your retirement account. Now let that sink in for a minute. All right, so in this case, they had 2 children. Each child would receive 50 grand a year in the first year, 52, 55, 57 grand a year in years following, until that 401k was completely spent over a 10-year period. So each child was in their late 40s, early 50s, and in a fairly high tax bracket, right? When are we most likely going to be in our highest bracket? It's when we're in our 40s and 50s, right? Making good money, whatever. So they're having to take that money from deceased mom and dad, and that money is coming to them whether they like it or not at 50 grand plus every year. Each child would have received 25 grand and had to pay roughly 40% with state and local and federal of that 25 grand to the IRS and the state states that they lived in. So what's 40% of 25 grand? Let's do the math. That's 10 grand, leaving each child with $15,000 in year one. 15,000 for each child. Well, 10,000 times 2, my calculator says 20 grand went to the IRS. Let's do the math there. Each child received 15 grand. IRS gets 20 grand. Which is greater? 15,000 or 20,000? Well, 20,000 is more than $15,000. So the children get 15 grand. The IRS, on a mathematical basis, is the best and biggest beneficiary of your 401k. So this is why the couple was calling me, all right? And what we decided to do before they passed away was to make sure that that money went into a life insurance policy. So it goes into their life insurance policy at 50 grand a year. They're going to spend that money down specifically and consecutively at 50,000 going into a policy over the next 10 years. So they're going to do this systematically over the next 10 years. But in the first year alone, they had over $1 million death benefit they could leave their children income tax free in the first year because of their, because of their funding. Yeah. So that to me sounds like a winning strategy, to go from taxable to my children and taxable to me and transfer it over to this other account, systematically paying my taxes over a 10-year period, taking that Band-Aid off slowly, getting it into a policy that could be accessed income tax free during my lifetime if we structure it correctly, or leave it income tax free to my children if we pass away before we're ready to. That to me sounds like generational wealth. It keeps the money in the family rather than sending it to the IRS. Oh no, by the way, just an extra fun little acronym, Julie. When you put the words the and IRS together, what word do you spell? The IRS, you get the word theirs. So there's a reason why they make these acronyms, I think.
Oh, that's so much fun.
I try to keep it fun, we're talking math and numbers. We got to keep it fun a little bit. So
I'll tell you though, it's also a very serious conversation. And I was at one point, I'm like, okay, we should probably pause and let everybody just breathe for a second, because if you're tracking with this conversation, you're realizing the magnitude of what is going to happen to everything that you are working for, and the immense tax burdens that you're encumbered with. And now you're like, oh my gosh, there's a solution. There's something out there. There is hope. And that's what's exciting about this. And so Mark, as we wrap this up, as I could seriously talk on this topic for an extended period of time, but you have a podcast. And if people there are lots of things. So one, if this is piquing your interest, you need to connect up with Mark. You need to make that 15-minute introductory call and say, okay, Mark, I heard you. I don't know what to do. Tell me the next steps. Let's talk about this. Where can they schedule that with you?
Yeah, simply go to growmorewealth.com if you want to schedule that 15-minute call. We've set up a specific website just for your listeners, Julie, and be honored to speak with you guys. Either me or one of my colleagues and advisors could connect with you to just answer questions. If you want to learn more or date me first, I guess, you can go to our podcast is Not Your Average Financial Podcast. Anywhere you're hearing this show, you can hear us. It's at Not Your Average Financial Podcast.
So those are really important ways that you connect up, because this is really such a foundational component that everyone needs to take to heart. And it's not that steep of a learning curve. I can assure everyone listening right now that if this is feeling very overwhelming, hopping on a call with Mark, and I have not personally done this, but I can tell how we communicate and everything, it would be very simple. I've done this with some other people, and you can hop on a call and you can learn about this, and it's not rocket science. And people would like to lead you to believe that, oh, you know what, just leave it in our hands. We'll take care of you. But you know what, you got to have a guide.
Yeah, so, that's right.
Mark, can you be a Sherpa?
Yeah, right on. I love it.
I'm going to call you like the money Sherpa.
I love that. I love that Sherpa idea. I'll tell you, most financial advisors are compensated to help you up the mountain. Speaking of Sherpas, they can get you up to the top of the mountain. But did you know that most deaths are coming down Mount Everest? 85% of deaths are coming down Mount Everest. Now, I think there's an analogy there, actually, Julie. So if I have an assets under management investment model as a financial planning firm, and most financial advisors are really just investment planners, and that's a distinction I would make. And if they're compensated to help you grow your nest egg, what is their motivation or their compensation to help you down the mountain? And down the mountain is really where you want to plant the flag. I don't care how big your mountain is. If you summit that mountain, that's great. But if you don't get back down to base camp, in other words, if you run out of money when you're 84 years old and the investment advisor has bigger fish to fry at that point, you're in big, big trouble. So building a business model as a financial planner, not around assets under management, which is how most investment advisors are paid, I think is the fair and right way to treat our clients. And yeah, I'd be honored to give a second opinion and look over your current financial situation to see if there's anything we can do to improve it, whether it's this bank on yourself idea or other strategies we offer.
Excellent. Be sure to check out everything that Mark has to offer. And you have a book also. I'll add links in the show notes naturally, but can you give a plug?
Yeah, sure. We've been honored to co-author a couple of best-selling books. We did one with Monica Sawyer. It's called Real Estate Investing for Women, and I had the privilege of being a co-author in that book. I don't know how she snuck me in, being a dude, but I was very honored to be in that list of authors. And then all about how you can use this for real estate investing, and would be happy to send it to folks if they would like a copy.
Excellent. Thank you again, Mark, for joining us. And until next time, everyone, go find your freedom.
Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Ask Me How I Know. This episode was brought to you by 3 Keys Investments. They are dedicated to helping people like you, you, my awesome listeners, develop passive income and legacy wealth through multifamily investing. Feel free to check out their website, 3keysinvestments.com, to see if there's an offering that will help your portfolio grow and meet all of your needs. If you haven't already rated, reviewed, subscribed, liked, all of those bells and whistles, I would be absolutely honored if you would do that for Ask Me How I Know. Thanks again, and go make it a great day.